So, how did you get started on this journey of yours of like tracing your ancestry and the healing journey? I know you probably. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with the term. I know I am, and some of the people around me are familiar with post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is running. I mean, the people of the African diaspora, our DNA, and it is a thing, and it's been a thing for a long time. So, how did you come about with this process? Like, I mean, it's a lot, but how did you come about the process of wanting to know who your ancestors were, going through finding people, the research and different things of that order and stuff, and what encouraged you to do that?
Well, there are kind of two different things. One is, how did I get started in genealogy? I had a child. When you are a new mother, you think about the future for your children. And in order to embrace the future, you have to go back to the past. I realized that I didn't know a lot about my past. And so I started doing my family genealogy. And I found out that someone who was alive when I was a child had been enslaved in Lowndes County, Alabama.
Lowndes County, Alabama? So that's here.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Why do you think I ended up in
I was just trying to figure it out, but let me let you answer the question before I interject again.
So I started searching, found her. Her name is Rhoda Leslie, and it just started me on this quest that I have been doing for the rest of my life since then.
Oh, wow.
And in doing the history of my family, you find all of these awful things that make you very sad and angry. And you cannot live with that because it's counterproductive. So you have to find ways to channel how you feel into something better. So I discovered a group called Coming to the Table at Eastern Mennonite University in Virginia. And they were working on a model for how do you heal historical harm, which is very much the topic of the post-traumatic slave syndrome. And so I went and I met the person who I ended up co-authoring my book, Gather at the Table, with. And we decided that this model they were working on was very theoretical. So it's like, how do we apply this in real life? So we decided to apply it in real life. And we went on a journey based on our family genealogies. His ancestors were the biggest slave traders in American history.
Wow.
I had more than a dozen ancestors who were enslaved. So how do you make peace with that? So we got on the road, and we drove 6,000 miles in 30 days, and we visited our genealogy sites.
6,000 miles in 30
Rhode
days.
Island, where they sent the slave ships out. We went to my ancestors in Lowndes County, Alabama, where my people were enslaved, and Mississippi, which is the other place. And then we wrote the book about the journey and what we learned. At the end of the journey, we realized the model for healing historical harm really did work. The point is that you have to confront the history, the truth of it, not the lies, not the way history has been recorded. History is his story. So whoever wins writes the story.
Exactly.
So these are the stories that were never written down. And the peace is found in being able to make those relationships and get over what happened in our past does not have to define our future. So white people and black people and everybody else, we really just need to realize we are all equal people, entitled to every possibility of the, quote, American dream. And so that is the work that I do now, is encouraging people to do their genealogy, to make connections with people, descendants of people who enslaved their ancestors. And it's kind of amazing what can happen. Sometimes it does not work, but many times it does.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm off the soapbox.
Okay, so you're also the founder of Black Ancestry. So,
because you genealogy community that is called Our Black Ancestry.
Our Black Ancestry.
We have a website, which is www.ourbblackancestry.com. So we get like 10,000 visits a month on the website, and it has links and information for how you do the research and resources for where you can go to find the records. And then I have Our Black Ancestry research community on Facebook that has 35,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And they will help you join. That's free. You join, and people will help you when you're doing your research. So if you have a problem reading documents or you have a question about where do I go to find this, they will tell you.
Okay.
The Our Black Ancestry website is $25 a year, and that is only so I can pay for hosting and keeping it updated.
Okay. That's great. That's a good thing. Also, I wanted to ask you, like, how long did it take? What was the process? I know y'all went on the journey. What was the process like of actually writing? Because this seems like a lot. Try to like compartmentalize into a novel. So, how long did it take y'all to write, like to finish this novel? The Gather at the Table. How many?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Whew.
We went on the road trip.
Road trip first.
And the idea was we are standing on opposite sides of a bridge. That's the best analogy I can give you.
Okay.
And we want to go to the same places at the same time and talk about how we feel about it. So we went to the memorial. We went to where Emmett Till was murdered.
Okay.
We went to where Tom's family sent off the slave ships. We went to where my family was enslaved in Lowndes County. And we would have these discussions afterwards to talk about how we felt about it. So doing that, and there was that, and we did a lot of other travel. That was just the big part. And then so it was a year of the exploration. And then it was another year actually writing the book.
Okay.
And the way we wrote the book was that we put it in segments so that it is divided into Tom's story and Sharon's story. Okay. How he felt, how I felt, and then how we came to resolution at the end.
I'm actually holding this book right now. I've read it. It took a while for me to get through it and stuff because I like to read a lot of books at a time and stuff. So I start on a page and then I'll be like, let me jump to that one. But I've been more interested in this particular book, so I need to reread it again since I met you at the kickoff on. I think it was on. It was on MLK Day. That's what it was. That's when I met you on MLK Day of this year, 2020. Yeah. So I've been looking because there's certain parts that I missed in the book or whatever, like the significance of it. Like I can't finish reading things without researching. So if I see something about Mennonite College or whatever else it is and stuff, I immediately stop and research it. So it has a lot of information and it has some resources in there too. So
yes.
So I just been I'm back on chapter 1. I want to say because I'm like let me.
Well, you keep referring back to it many times.
I'm like let me get to
not to absorb because the historical harm was so great. Black people were totally dehumanized. When you do your research and you find that our ancestors were not counted as human beings. They are in property records. They were traded back and forth. They were mortgaged. They were insured against loss. They were beaten, starved. It was horrific. And we didn't talk about it because I think that our ancestors just didn't want to expose us to the horror of it. So a lot of families, they just never talked about it. Like in my family, I asked my father to give me more information, and he wouldn't.
Oh, wow. Because it was so painful.
With the great-grandmother his grandmother was enslaved. So getting through that is a big deal. And a lot of people turn their head away. For black people, if the horror was so great, we didn't want to talk about it. For the white people, they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to feel guilty, for doing something. And that's the kind of the barrier that we have to get across.
Yes, ma'am.
The creation of the myth that black people are less and white people are more. Mm-hmm. That's the root of racism, and it's all fake. It really has to be destroyed.
I want to ask you, Ms. Morgan. This is Malika. We met at the Bosco Center on MLK Day, and I really enjoyed your presentation the next day at the library. It's very, very special, and I have been enjoying the book as well. I have two questions for you. One is about, so I read in Essence Magazine an article many, many years ago, I think it was Essence Magazine, about a woman who was doing research on her genealogy. And she talked about the moment that, I guess she started in records that are human records, and then, as you just raised, had to, at one point, transition from those types of records that, you can locate people in, death certificates, birth certificates, and she had to switch and begin looking at that moment of transition in property records. And she spoke to the feeling of having to look for her family in property records. I was just wondering if you remember that moment in your research, and if it had a similar kind of emotional connection or impact.
I remember exactly that day at the Alabama Department of Archives and History when I pulled up a slave schedule, which has no names other than the slaveholder and the list of the people that were enslaved, but not named. It will tell you male, female, age, color, and there's nothing else to identify them. Mm-hmm. And when I found it, and I was horrified, because it made the reality of it really brought it home that we were just ticks on a schedule. And there was a white woman sitting next to me who found a record at the same time for her family. And she exclaimed, it was like, oh, wow, I found him.
Wow.
I was so pissed off. I wanted to... cannot resort to profanity.
I'm like, we on the radio live.
The person who was helping me do my research, he came over and he put his hands on my shoulder and he said, calm down, everybody has this reaction. Calm down. And I remember exactly when that happened. And that's been really a while back, but it was really a huge moment because you do realize it's like, I think that the records were obscured so that nobody could come back in the future and be able to prove it. So when you find a slave schedule and there is no name of any kind, no first name, no last name, it's like you can't really prove that, this is what happened to you.
That's interesting.
So it's like the Holocaust was our Holocaust.
Yeah. That's so interesting because you... I think very gently someone was trying to raise that at the library when the question of reparations came up. Basically, how would we even prove, that someone was deserving to be repaired in their family line? Because how would you be able to prove that they were even, an enslaved African, or a descendant, rather, of an enslaved African. So very interesting that you would say.
It proved that they were slaves, that